Welcome back to Surviving and Thriving, where we share with you the things that we have learned as we have transitioned our family from struggling to survive disease to thriving right smack dab in the midst of it, in the hopes that something that we share with you will help you and enlighten you as you transition your family from struggling to survive disease to thriving right smack dab in the midst of it. So, we've talked about them time cycles, right? And how to reach any goal you want to set. We've talked about aggressively pursuing your health. Last month, we also talked about being of good courage. Be strong, right? And do the work. Well, today, we're going to talk a little bit about diligence. Maybe not quite the way you think we're going to talk about it. So I'm going to tell you a story. You should be able to relate to it because we've all experienced this multiple times in our lives. Different stories, different ways, but the same thing. And I've experienced a lot of times. And we're going to tie it up in the end to how that applies to diligence, pursuing your goal, right? And doing the work. Ready? Here we go. Well, I was studying and I put a self-imposed date to finish studying and reading this book and doing this test, right? And I would spend 3 days a week, 3 hours a day studying this particular thing. But what I was noticing was I had been on it a couple weeks and I wasn't making no progress at all. That's a lot of time to not be progressing, right? And what I mean is that I would be studying and sometimes in those 3 hours, I only got 3 pages done. Some days it was like I got 2 pages, plus I went over the old 3 pages that I had already studied the time before. So I wasn't making any progress at all. And I was frustrated and I was irritated. And I had to keep talking to myself along this process going, hey, you done spent a few weeks and you ain't made it nowhere. You ain't even halfway through this book. And I was irritated. So I had to look at it and say, what's the issue? And what's the solution? So when I looked at it and I evaluated the situation, I said, well, here's the issue. The issue is I know how to read faster. I can get through this faster. I could probably pass this test too, right? But am I really learning? And what's my ultimate goal? So I had to look at my ultimate goal, what I'm going for, and what I was learning was very important in the ultimate goal. So I had to take the time and really grasp the information. It was one of them books where there was no fluff sentences. Like every sentence was power packed with information. And I had to break them down and really learn, right? And so I have to stop and visualize and look up some stuff. And I might read something on this page, have to go back to the other page and correlate it and see how it goes together so I can really grasp this information so that it can become a part of me. Not just head knowledge, right? And so it was taking that. So my options were read through it fast, maybe pass the test, but don't have the information, pay for it later on down the line, or take the time to really get it now, pass the test, and let it benefit me later on down the line. So I chose to take the time. Every time I had to come to this place, I chose to take the time, but it don't change the fact that I was irritated and it was frustrating me because it was taking me too long and I know I can get it quicker than this, right? So after some time, after a few weeks of studying and being frustrated and complaining to my husband and telling him, but I'm going to hang in there, I'm going to hang in there. One day I sat down and I was excited because at the end of that 3 hours, I was like, I made it to half the book. Woo, it was a big accomplishment. I was patting myself on the back. I started cheering and all kind of stuff, sitting there all by myself doing this. And well, there was people around me looking at me, but I was like, I had myself a little party in my seat, right? I was so excited about it. So then the next time when I come to sit down for those 3 hours, I pull out my stuff. I get to studying. I finished half the book, the second half of the book in 1 3-hour setting. Better yet, I even had 2.5, no, I did it for 2.5 hours. I had a half an hour left in my set time to study. So I did half the book in less time, right? So I'm like, what in the world? I did half the book in 2.5 hours, and it took me weeks to get to half the book. So I was like, whoa. So I had to stop. I celebrated. I did my test. I did well on it, celebrated. But I had to sit down and analyze what in the world took place. And I thought to myself, I've been here so many times. This is a familiar story. Isn't it familiar to you? Maybe a different scenario, but a familiar story. I said, this is a familiar story, right? When you're putting in effort, you're going for a goal, you're doing something, you're giving it everything that's in you, and you're consistent and you're diligent and you're doing all this stuff and you ain't getting results. I'm putting all this into my health and I'm not seeing the results. Feel like I'm getting worse or I'm staying at the same place, right? I'm putting all of this into learning how to manage my house and somehow I still can't get it together, right? I'm putting all of this into building muscles. I'm lifting weights. I'm being diligent. I'm eating right. But I ain't seeing no muscles pop up. Not the way I think they should, right? You name it. Whatever goal you've ever had in life and you went for it and didn't get it in the time that you thought you should see results. Maybe not even accomplish the whole thing, but be where you thought you should be at a certain time, right? We've all experienced that. And I sat down and I thought about all these different aspects in my life where I've experienced that over and over again. And you want to quit and you want to give up because it ain't worth it. I'm doing all of this and I'm not getting nothing. I'm going to stop. It's been a long time, right? And then one day you sit down and you look back and you go, whoa, look at these results. When did they pop up? I didn't even see them coming. How did I get here? Right? You may not even reach your goal, but you're like, whoa, you're amazed at where you're at. Then there's other times where you can do it and you'll sit down and you'll be like, I've been struggling. And then you look up and you go, how did I get my end result? How did I get out of debt like that? I didn't even see this coming. All I knew is I had my head down. I was working. I was frustrated. I was irritated, but I kept persevering. And now all of a sudden, woo, I got it. Don't you know you got some stories like that in your life? Stop and think about it for a minute. You can relate. We can all relate, right? That happens to us all. So how does this relate to us right now in our health, right? How does this relate to us in doing the work? Because when you do the work, sometimes you ain't going to get the results. And when you think you should get it. If you ain't watched the video last month, Be Strong and Do the Work, watch that video. In fact, you need to watch January, February, and March. You need to watch the time cycles and aggressively pursuing, do the work, because we're going on a journey, right? So let's go on this journey together, okay? When you're going after whatever it is that you're going after, especially in your health, sometimes you're not going to see what you think you should see when you think you should see it. Sometimes you're not going to get the results you think you should have by the time you think you should have it. But that does not mean to quit. Obstacles and delays will come. Anything in life that's worth it, it's going to cost you, baby. Ain't no way around it. You're going to have to pay the freight. You're going to have to pay the cost. Okay? But the results is always worth it. And when you get the results, it may not be when you thought you should have got it. It may not be how you thought you should have got it. Oh, but when you get it, it's kind of like birthing a baby. I'm sorry if you're a man and you ain't birthed one, but you've seen somebody, right? Go through it, your wife or somebody. It's like birthing a baby. When you're in the middle of them pains, it hurt. You don't like nobody. You just want to get it out. It feel like it's taking your breath away. It feel like you getting hit by a Mack truck, right? But when that baby come out and they say it's a whatever, and you hear that little pap and that cry, all you say is, give me my baby. And you holding that baby and you just loving on it. You so excited. You can't believe this done came out your body. You counting fingers and toes. You done forgot about that pain that you thought that you couldn't make it through that was killing you. So you thought, right? It's the same thing. Sometimes when we go through stuff, it gets frustrating. It's going to get hard. Okay? You're going to feel like you're not getting the results that you want. But when you get the results, you're going to forget about all that stuff that you went through, and it's going to be worth it. And I'm going to tell you something that I've learned. On the other side of it, however long it took you to get through it, it don't even seem like it's that long no more. It's only seemed like it's long and forever while you in it. But there'll come a day where things will accelerate. There'll come a day. There's something called compound. You know how your banks work with compound interest, right? That compound interest is a booger, ain't it, right? You can have work and work and work and work, and there's something in that momentum and that consistency and in that compounding that accelerates. Okay? So here, let me give you an example of something. Diligent. Diligent means to keep at it, right? You're keeping at something. You're being consistent. Well, it's different from consistency in a sense, although they tie together. There's some words I believe that tie together. They're joined at the hip. Consistency, diligence, perseverance is another one, right? Fortitude. They all kind of tied together. Mean something different, but kind of alike, but kind of different. But they kind of go hand in hand. You can't get one without the other, I think. Okay? So let's say this. A person who's diligent. Diligent means that you're constantly going for it. Constantly going for it. Now, what does constantly mean? Does it mean every hour for some? Does it mean every day for some? But if you do it once every month, that don't mean that you're not being diligent, right? You can still be diligent. There are times when you're in the bed, when you're going through stuff, your body is going through stuff. Just because you can't work on it or do it at that time doesn't mean that your mind isn't fixed and focused on it. Okay? When you're diligent and when you're consistent, even with consistency, they kind of go together sometimes. Even with consistency, it doesn't mean that you have to do it every day. Consistent can be I do it 3 times a week, like in my studying, right? Or it can be I do it twice a month. But you know that you're constantly going for it. You're not letting that pressure up off of it, even if you can't get to it every day. But you kind of focused on it and you're going towards it. It's like shooting a bow and arrow, right? You have to be fixed on that target. Everything in your body is geared towards that target because your breathing affects where that arrow's going to land, right? Your posture, your aim, your arm, everything in your body has to line up with that bow and that arrow, but everything's got to be focused on that same target. Okay? So when you're diligently pursuing something, everything in you is focused on something. Even if you're not doing it, but you're focused towards it and you're constantly pursuing it one step at a time. It's like building a house, one brick at a time. I saw some buildings actually, and houses get built, and it took many years. And you think it don't take that long to build a house. These weren't all extravagant. There was nothing special to them. It could have been built in a couple months. But what took it the years? I don't know what their situation is. Could have been their finances, could have been whatever. But the foundation came. Months later, part of the frame came. Then the other part came. And it just took years. And some it would sit there just as a frame for over a year. Then something else would come, right? They were diligently working on it, although other people might not have thought they were being diligent. You don't know what was going on in the background, but they were consistent. They were still making sure to take a step, right, to get to what they're trying to get to. Okay? So when you're consistent and when you're diligent and you're constantly going after, okay, you will attain. One of my I have a lot of favorite. I love the Bible. I love the Word of God. And I love a lot in Proverbs. But one of the things that I always draw on in Proverbs is all diligence and hard work pays off. And you have got to know that when you're going for your goal, your health goal, or whatever it is in life, that all diligence and all hard work, it will eventually pay off. Now, in that, there is no promise that says it's going to pay off when you want it to pay off. But it says if you stay diligent, it will pay off. Okay, so you have to stay diligent. So here's the example I wanted to give you. So a person, say they're going to go outside and chop down a tree. And this tree, they're chopping down, it takes them 60 minutes, 1 hour to chop down this tree. They have a tree, exact same measurements, exact same everything that another person needs to chop down. So we already know this person takes 60 minutes to do it. And we're not talking about the strength that they use and all of that. We're just talking about like on paper, just in numbers and theory, okay? It takes them 60 minutes to do it. So this person, person B, is going to do it, but they don't have an hour to give to it today, right? So they say, well, I'm going to chop on this tree 3 minutes per day. They're going to get that tree down, but they're not going to do it in 1 hour on one day, right? Probably take them like 20 days to do it if they're doing it 3 minutes per day, because that 3 times 20 is 60. So that gives them that 60 minutes in that hour. So in those 20 days, they will actually chop down the tree at the end of those 20 days. But if another person comes and say, hey, I can't give it 3 hours. I'm sorry, I can't give it an hour. I can't even do 3 minutes a day, but I can do 3 minutes a week, right? They're going to get it done, but it may take them 3 months to get it done. They all chopped down the same tree, the same measurements, the same everything, and it took them all a total of 60 minutes, but that 60 minutes can be in a day, 60 minutes can be in 20 days, or that 60 minutes can come in 3 months. But they were all diligent to accomplish. They stayed with it. They stayed at it. No matter what the rain did, the wind did, or how they felt, they were consistent in doing what they said. They were diligent. So you be diligent. May not come how you want it. May not come when you want it, right? And you can be diligent and someone else is diligent and your results may be different at different times, right? But some people, they did it in an hour. Some people did it in 20 days, and some people did it in 3 months, depending upon their effort and their situation and circumstances. So I hope something in there was helpful for you. Remember, in all things, at all times, do you be diligent. Bye.